Good evening, everyone. I'm Enco Sierwood with the Montgomery County Planning Department. Welcome to this virtual meeting, open house for University Boulevard. Thanks for making time to join us this evening. This is a plan that the department is on the way. We had an in-person meeting last week at Blair High School, and now this evening we're following up a similar presentation with staff, Q&A, etc. Next slide. So this meeting will be recorded and shared on our website. Please mute yourself throughout this meeting, and you could place your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom. Next. So tonight's agenda is an overview of the plan, background, context, framework, Q&A, and obviously we welcome and thank you for spending your time with us this evening. Next. So the project team members, Zubin is with us. Zubin.
Hi, good evening.
Next is Jessica McVeary, Master Plan Supervisor.
Hello, good evening.
And next is the Division Chief, Miss Carrie Sanders.
Good evening. Thank you for being here.
I'm not sure if Pam is with us this evening, but Pam is one of our interns in the department. I'm in Sierwood. Our urban design group is composed of Luis Estrada and Natasha Fahim. Can you guys introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Luis, are you on the call? All right, not hearing Luis, we're going to keep it going. In terms of mobility and transportation group, we'll start with Alex.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Is Jessup or Eric Gray on the call?
Hello, everyone. This is Jessup Lee.
Hello, this is Eric Gray.
Thank you, gentlemen. I don't think David Ansbacher is on this call, but he's also part of the big group. Amy Lindsay is taking up our environmental role matters.
Good evening.
And then on the research group, we start with Bilal, if he's on this call.
Good evening, everybody.
And Melissa.
Good evening, hi.
I'm not sure if Archie's joining us, but if not, we're going to move to our housing planner, Miss Lisa.
Good evening, everyone.
And then historic resources, John or Rebecca, if you're on this call.
Good evening, everyone.
And then finally, last but not least, Parks Department, Chuck.
Hello, Chuck Kynes. I'm here.
Thank you. So that's all the members of our side, and obviously there are other partners with Maryland Department of Transportation, as well as State Highway Administration that we work with on this project. So next slide. So who we are part of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, bi-county agency, Montgomery and Prince George's County, since around 1920s. Montgomery County's group is a multidisciplinary geographic team. We are part of the Mid-County group, which is essentially north of the Beltway, south of Germantown, shown here on the screen, sort of yellowish color, brownish color, I should say. The green is obviously up county or the agriculture reserve, and then a purplish area is down county areas such as Bethesda, Silver Spring, etc. Next slide. So what do we do? So we do a variety of things for the county. We develop plans, land use, transportation, strategies, approaches, community-wide, county-wide plans as well, such as the bikeway master plan. We review all new developments such as site plans, preliminary plans, etc. update zoning regulations for the planning board and the county council, do research, and we have a robust historic preservation program. So the department covers much of the county except for the municipalities of Rockville, Gaithersburg, Poolsville. Those are jurisdictions that have their, as well as Washington Grove, those are jurisdictions that have their own independent zoning authority. Next slide. So what are the different plan types? So we have the general plan that was recently approved by the county council after several years of debate. That operates at a very high level in terms of looking out decades in terms of different policies that a county should be pursuing. 1960s, there was the first general plan that laid out much of the work that's still ongoing in terms of wedges and corridors, overall concept. An amendment was done in the early 1990s, and then this one, the general plan update, also called Drive Montgomery 2050. So next layer of plans, sort of functional plans or countywide initiatives such as the bikeway master plan that's looking at countywide matters, transit plans, etc. Next layer down is master sector plans, and those are more community-oriented plans. So master plan typically would include a large geographic area, such as North Bethesda or Camp Mill. A sector plan sometimes is a little smaller area. We also review new development applications from private property owners as well as the public in terms of Montgomery County Public Schools, for example, as well as Montgomery County Department of Transportation. In terms of our mandatory referral, our role. And then in terms of additional work we do in terms of a variety of studies and guidelines that are created, a lot of times out of our research group. Next slide. So a master sector plan, or in some cases a corridor plan, which this one is that we seek to engage the community. That's what we started last week, and that's what we're doing tonight, to hear a variety of perspectives on the work that we're about to get off the ground. We typically have a sort of collaborative effort to hear a variety of voices for the plan area. We typically have sort of a framework of community vision that sort of lays out some aspirational goals that the community believes should be accomplished during the life of the sector master plan. As I noted, we bring together a variety of voices. We analyze and prepare land use and zoning recommendations, as well as infrastructure, especially mobility or transportation infrastructure items such as pedestrian, bikeway improvements, bus rapid transit. We do an assessment of the environment and ways the community can enhance itself over time. We also do examine existing public facilities as well as parks and open spaces. If there are historic resources, we typically do an examination of that. And we also support and examine and really promote an environment regarding social equity and inclusion. Overall, these plans are important because they serve as a guide for future development. Next slide. So there's a lot of words on this slide, but it sort of lays out the variety of things that are associated with the approval of a new master or sector plan. So we typically, our work program is established by the county council, the planning board, the planning director typically would submit a variety of items for the county council's consideration in terms of a work program for the master plan group. And once the council gives us the go-ahead to start a plan, we begin that process. And then we do a variety of sort of pre-scoping activities in terms of learning about the area, figuring out the boundaries and things of that sort. And then we typically prepare a scope of work. We host a public meeting or meetings, and then begin to prepare sort of portions of the document that we sort of build things with the community. After several months, typically 6 to 8 months of our work, we would have briefings with the planning board in terms of telling them what we're doing in terms of the project or any initial issues they may have. And then we begin to put it all together in terms of a working document or working draft. Once we have all of that together, we will ask the board to host a public hearing, and then the board will have its public hearing on the document. And the document will include preliminary recommendations, essentially our professional view of the project. And then after that public hearing, the board goes into work sessions where the board takes our recommendations and they go section by section, page by page in that draft document and begin making their own changes. And then once that process is completed, and then it gets transmitted to the county executive and the county council. The county executive does a fiscal analysis in terms of what are the anticipated costs of the overall plan. And then the planning, and then the county council hosts another public hearing. So you have a public hearing with the planning board, and you also have another one with the county council. The Planning, Housing, Economic Development Committee of the council, which consists of 3 members, will review the board's documents, and after they've had a variety of additional work sessions on the board's document, then you'll have the full council reviewing the planning board's, essentially planning board's draft, which becomes the Fed committee's draft. And then finally, you'll have an up or down vote on the master plan process. So that's typical process that we do here in Montgomery County. Next slide. So within this portion of Montgomery County, we have not done a lot of work recently. So on the screen, the map on the right shows sort of existing plans along University Boulevard. So the striped blue area is the proposed plan area boundary. The purple area is the Kemp Mill plan that was done 2001. That was the last time the department did a new plan in this area. The area in green is really primarily the Four Corners area. And then the area in yellow, master plan of communities for Kensington, Wheaton. And then further down, we have the Silver Spring plan. And then further down that towards the bottom of the page is the Long Branch plan, which was done in anticipation of the Purple Line. Next slide. So this plan, similar to the plans for the Purple Line, is really sort of a corridor focus plan, which means it's linear in its orientation. It's really looking regarding roadways, in this case, future potential public transit in terms of bus rapid transit. It's similar in many ways to some of the plans that we've done within the last decade. For example, in Forest Glen, Montgomery Hills along Georgia Avenue, in the White Flint North Bethesda area, the White Flint 1 and 2 series plans for Rockville Pike, Beers Mill that was done in 2019 on Auto State Road, and Shady Grove, which is not a portion of Rockville Pike Frederick Road. So we've done a lot of projects where our corridor in their orientation is focused on state road. So all the plans noted, MD 97, MD 55, Veers Mill, et cetera, they're all state roads, and we've obviously have to work with the state on the recommendations that we come up. Next slide. Oh, can you go back, Zubin? Oh, thanks. One of the things I should note, towards the bottom of the screen, in Georgia Avenue, what we call a section, as well as the Veers Mill Road, these are things that we prepare as we're creating this plan in terms of showing where we have existing conditions and then what's potential in the future. So in terms of, for example, in Georgia Avenue, that's a short-term improvement noted between 16th Street to Spring Street. And then Veers Mill is showing the potential regarding bus rapid transit with the access road being consideration. And then the images on the right in terms of Veers Mill showing the sort of the black lines showing that's the plan area boundary. And likewise for Forest Glen, Montgomery Hills, similarly oriented regarding running not too far off of the roadway. Next slide. So for this proposed plan, We started with areas that we have not yet done a lot of work in, and that's really within the core between four corners and heading further north in the plan area. So it's roughly approximately 3 miles. We're looking at this as a multiple phase project. So it's roughly 8 miles between Kensington to Tacoma Langley. And we're focusing on this area as phase 1, essentially north of the Beltway to the edge of the Wheaton CBD area. The area south of the Beltway, our colleagues in the Down County group next year should be taking up that as phase 2. And then in the future, we will be doing the area that's noted here as phase 3 from the edge of Wheaton Forest area heading into Kensington. The plan area boundary, how we establish it so far, really tries to wrestle with focusing on the roadways, focusing on where the bus rapid transit plan from 2013 recommended a variety of new BRT stops. So those are important, as well as public facilities. So we'll be able to capture Northwood School, obviously Blair, and other schools, both east and west of University Boulevard. Next slide. So as I noted, the area is roughly 3 miles between the Beltway to the edge of the forest. It's 6 lanes primarily, with turn lanes, posted speed limits 35. We do have existing transit, primarily ride-on, a variety of ride-on routes, serve the existing communities, as well as Metro bus, C2 and C4. As I noted, this route, University Boulevard, is a bus rapid transit route for the 2013 functional plan. There are no formal existing bike lanes on the roadway. You could ride in the roadway if you so choose. Most of the sidewalks, at least within this section of University Boulevard, is adjacent to the travel lane. And then in terms of roadway control, the Maryland State Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration, they have a huge role regarding University Boulevard. And obviously, as I noted in terms of some of the previous plans that we've done for Georgia Avenue and Veers Mill, we've been able to work with them, and we will work with them on this project as well. Next slide. So one of the key features of this area is one of the key features of this area, really the residential communities that are either at the roadway or adjacent to it. So a variety of names that are here on this slide. When we met the public last week, we have some new names, and we'll update that to reflect the comments. Most of these names come from the old subdivisions that identified Woodmore, Indian Springs, Northwood Park, etc. Next slide. So in terms of existing land uses, this is primarily a residentially focused area with a variety of institutional uses. And those include obviously public schools, religious institutions, etc. We do have some multifamily, primarily at Arcola and University. And we do have, primarily in the Four Corners area, commercial development. But primarily we do have much of the development here is single family or some townhouses and a multifamily. We do have a few senior housing as well. Next slide. So one of the interesting things in this area is that when things were built, so the two graphs on the right portion of the screen shows that much of the commercial development was built between essentially 1950 to the early 90s. And much of that occurred between 1950 and 1960, and likewise the following decade. So after then, a lot of the commercial development, you haven't had that. Likewise, multifamily, much of that occurred in the early 60s, mid 60s, with the Warwick and University Towers building at the intersection of Arcola and University. Next slide. So a bit about zoning. This is a matter that we'll dig into on the project. So much of the areas within a residential zone, either R60, that's primarily the color you see on the screen, sort of orangish color. That means 6,000 square foot per a lot. And then we have also R90, which is 9,000 square foot minimum lot size. And we do have one R200 property, that's Collins Funeral Home. In 2014, as part of the zoning rewrite, the council instituted a variety of new commercial zones within this plan area, and also countywide. And those are the commercial residential town zones of CRT, as well as the neighborhood retail zone, which is NR. Next slide. So the area is blessed with a variety of public facilities, including a fire station near 495. You also have a post office. You have a variety of public schools, a variety of public parks, including Camp Mill, North Four Corners, either within the plan area or within the study area, the surrounding communities. And one of the great features of this area is actually located between two dynamic stream valley parks, Northwest Branch, as well as Sligo Creek. Next slide. So as I noted, a variety of parks, North Four Corners, Blair Local, Camp Mill Urban, just some of the different parks that are within the plan area. And then obviously the stream valleys that are nearby as well. Next slide. So that's much in terms of background, in terms of our existing conditions, if you wish. Next, coming in part of this presentation, is sort of pivot and really looking at more countywide or a variety of framework initiatives that have been approved by the County Council within the last decade or so. And then it would include the Transit Corridors Plan in 2013, the new zoning ordinance in 2014, Vision Zero in 2017, the Bicycle Master Plan in 2018. Associated with that, a pedestrian level of comfort, Racial Equity and Social Justice Act, Climate Action Plan from 21, Complete Streets, and then general plan update from this year, which on the way now is the Pedestrian Master Plan. So all of these things are combining and providing a bigger picture for this corridor as we begin our planning efforts. Next slide. So the functional plan for 2013 noted that recommended a bus rapid transit route along University Boulevard. The image on the right is showing it starting from the Tacoma Langley Crossroads area into Wheaton. The circles are proposed bus BRT stops. Within this plan area, that's proposed, we have 4 stops identified: Inwood Avenue, Arcola Avenue, Dennis Avenue, and US 29. So the rights of way also recommended in the functional plan, and obviously this will be important as we think about the variety of different elements that could occur within the proposed recommended rights of way. Next slide. So the image on the left is the functional plan, and then the image on the right is just highlighting the areas that were proposed in the functional plan with the proposed plan area boundary, showing where those potential BRT stops could be. At US 29, Dennis Avenue, Arcola, and Inwood. Next slide. So Montgomery County Department of Transportation, as a lead implementing transportation agency in the county, have been implementing some portions of the bus rapid transit network. So obviously phase 1 in US 29 is up and running. Work for phase 2 is on the way. And then a variety of BRT routes that are currently on the study by Montgomery County Department of Transportation. So Rockville Pike, or MD 55, Fears Mill, North Bethesda Transitway got started this year. Likewise, New Hampshire Avenue and Great Seneca Transit Network. So those are some of the things that they're currently working on with future rollout into the future. Next slide. So in terms of, I noted earlier in terms of the countywide zoning changes the council approved in terms of the new zoning ordinance from 2014. I'm just going to draw your attention to the commercial area around Four Corners and then the Kemp Mill shopping center area. It's highlighted here on the left portion of the slide is noted, as well as the one on the right is the Four Corners area. So one of the things that the 2014 zoning ordinance did was to really create, for example, in the Four Corners area, more mixed use potential development there. So the commercial residential town zone permits both commercial development, residential development, and it gives a specific height. So the image on the lower portion of this screen that says floor area ratio, so floor area ratio, or FAR, is how one of the traditional ways to measure the intensity of development. An FAR is essentially the ratio between the land area or what can occur on the site. So in some cases, a floor area of 1 could fill up the whole site, or it could fill up 2 stories or 3 stories or 4 stories, etc. Next slide. So Vision Zero is a comprehensive approach to preventing roadway related accidents and fatalities on county roadways. And that's something that the county council, the county executive, the state highway administration have all been supportive of. In 2017, this image on the right portion of this map is showing, for a portion of University Boulevard, it was noted as the first along #1 on state controlled roadways in terms of a high injury network, in terms of the variety of accidents or fatalities that have occurred along this portion of University Boulevard, which is between Four Corners to Georgia Avenue. So our focus and much of our planning efforts here will include thinking about this roadway and using a Vision Zero approach to make it better. Next slide. The Bikeway Master Plan, another functional plan looking countywide, recommended a site path, which is roughly typically 8 feet minimum in terms of width, that could accommodate a bicyclist as well as a pedestrian. We will be looking to figure out how we could accommodate this within the recommended right of way. What's shown on the middle screen with the 2 cars and the area in red is showing a typical section of what a site path would include. Typically it's set back or set away from the travel lane, which is roughly typically sometimes 4 to 5 feet away from the travel lane to create a small green buffer. So we'll be looking at how potentially this recommendation per the Bikeway Master Plan could be implemented in the future. Next slide. So as part of in addition to our Vision Zero work and our Bikeway Master Planning work, we're also looking at pedestrians. And one of the things in terms of creating a safer environment for people to walk, or people that are in a wheelchair, or people that are elderly, is really creating a more comfortable environment. So University Boulevard is, in terms of work that we've done so far, has been identified as undesirable because primarily the travel lane is right adjacent to the sidewalk. So we'll be, again, seeking to explore how we can make this environment more hospitable for people walking. Next slide. So Racial Equity Social Justice Act came out in 2019, and the Planning Board is required to consider racial equity and social justice impacts when creating a master sector plan. And that's something that we'll be delving into as we prepare this plan. In addition, the Office of Legislative Oversight, or OLO, will be reviewing whatever recommendations the Planning Board has as we sort of move forward on this document. Next slide. So Climate Action Plan came out recently. It's not a comprehensive document. It's seeking to have aggressive environmental goals. At least within our efforts as part of this planning effort, we will be seeking opportunities to make a contribution towards an improved environment for all users of not only the roadway, but people that are living along a University Boulevard. Next slide. Complete streets, again, thinking about how to have a street that's better, accessible, safe for all users. And what you see on the screen, there are two sort of typologies. One is a boulevard with a variety of tool elements that are within it, such as a side path, transit way, and then likewise the one on the right is a town center boulevard. So as we move forward on this plan, we'll be coming up with a variety of options or alternatives that will be considering a variety of these elements within the context of University Boulevard. Context meaning existing single-family houses, existing institutions, institutional uses, etc. Next slide. So as I noted earlier, recently the County Council approved the general plan update Drive 2050 after much debate. The image on the right is showing the area within University Boulevard, which is that sort of bright red color, showing that proposed 3+ mile area. It's within the corridor focused growth portion of the general plan update. And essentially, this is something Montgomery County is known for providing potential development along areas where we have existing infrastructure, but also making sure that that future development is within the context of the community. So we'll be seeking those opportunities as we move forward on this plan. Next slide. So we've had one meeting last week in person, attended by approximately 70 people or so. And then we'll have a few additional meetings coming up in terms of mobility, environmental matters, housing development, parks, open space, and other topics. So we're now getting started with our public engagement, meeting property owners, meeting with residents, meeting with a variety of institutional users along the corridor, such as churches, public schools, etc. So if you have a community, if you're representing a community, if you're a property owner, please reach out to us. We want to come meet with you and have a conversation. We can learn more about some of the challenges and issues that you may have. Next slide. So in terms of our schedule, we are moving forward in terms of engagement, beginning to build out the plan to learn more about the area. And that will continue into next year. So next fall, we should have a staff or working draft document. And then hopefully we'll get to the board next fall, and then board work sessions, etc., into spring of 24, transmit it to the county executive, county council for their review and action in 24, summer to fall 24 for the county council review. So I believe that's the last slide. Zubin. Oh, next is, yes, our website. We're going to continue to build information, and everything will be posted there either before or after a meeting such as this one. Could always reach out to myself as Zubin in terms of, again, to meet with us, questions, etc. So I think next, Zubin, is the survey, correct?
Yes, that's right. So thank you very much, Nkosi. So I'm going to share a link to a survey in the chat in just about a minute. And then when you get a chance, please fill it out. we have a lot of questions also coming in. So immediately after the survey, we'll have a Q&A. The response we've gotten from the community is overwhelming. So the way we thought about this meeting has changed a little bit. So at this point, we'll just take questions in the Q&A, and then one of us will ask those questions and direct them to one of the, I think, 17 staff members that we have here tonight. And of course, we cannot answer every single question coming in. We have, last I checked, we had about 100 attendees. So it might be a little difficult, but what we'll do is we'll also make sure to get as many of these questions answered and get them on our website. So please take a look at this website. We have a newsletter, sign up for the newsletter. And as Nkosi mentioned earlier, we'll have many more such events. So if you see in the chat, I just posted a survey link. If you haven't gotten it, please let me know through the Q&A. And then after about a 5-minute break, we can get started with Q&A. Does it sound good? All right. I think we're getting some good responses for the survey, I hope. So we're going to start with the Q&A portion for tonight. And this first question is for Alex, who is working on transportation for us. And it says, this is a comment, not a question, but I sincerely hope that the plan recommends protected bike lanes, especially as they can connect Northwood and Blair to surrounding communities and to Sligo Park. Also reduced speed limits. Additionally, I hope for buffered sidewalks and for them to be widened. So Alex, if you can respond to that.
Yeah, thanks, Zubin, and thanks very much for this question, or this comment rather. I appreciate the comment. I think we are considering a variety of options. I think, as Nkosi mentioned, the bicycle master plan calls for a side path along the corridor, but I think we would certainly be open to considering other potential solutions. And there are a variety of facilities that I think we've heard interest in and needs for on the corridor, so including BRT. I think the comment about buffered sidewalks or wider sidewalks is something we've heard quite a bit in our engagement so far. And then also the interest in the bike facilities. For the reduced speeds, yeah, I think that's also something worth considering. I think safety is a big issue in this corridor and one that we've heard as well. And the county has a Vision Zero policy and a Vision Zero action plan, and speed is certainly one of the things that's associated with higher levels of crashes. So something we'll be thinking about.
Great. And I think the next question is also for you, which is, what lessons were learned during the temporary University Boulevard bike lanes, and how will they be applied to this plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have spoken with SHA about this project, and we'll continue to coordinate with them. The SHA pilot also had a presentation back in January that has some of the initial findings from that pilot project. I think one of the big things that stuck out to me was that the delays traveling for vehicles on the corridor were nominal, were not substantial. But we have heard some concerns about folks trying to make turns at Arcola Avenue, and understand those concerns as well. So something we definitely be keeping in mind. And then I think the same issue with thinking about the facilities that could be put on University Boulevard, safety will really be top of mind for us.
Great. This next question, I think I'm going to turn it over to Lisa. This is also a comment, which is, I'd like to see the expansion of zoning to allow small multifamily buildings as well as duplexes, triplexes, especially in the area immediately adjacent to the corridor, I assume.
Sure, great question. I love the question personally. I think just having completed Thrive, we now have some policy-wide, county-wide guidance that will give us the ability to make those changes, but we still haven't figured out the implementing tool of what those changes will look like yet. So that's a long way of saying is nothing is off the table right now. We're currently evaluating all of our options, but University Boulevard presents a great opportunity to look at those as a first pass as implementing Thrive.
Nkosi, do you want to add to that? Or
No, I think Lisa answered it. Yeah, we're going to explore in context where we think potential changes could occur, but we have to do the work, and we're not there yet. So.
And this next question, I think both Nkosi and I can address it together, which is, how is the planning department reaching out to communities that are not always directly engaged in the planning process, like people with disabilities and communities of color? Nkosi, you want to take a first stab at it?
Yeah, sure. So we've started to make sure we get to leaders within the community. So we reached out to Castleton, Maryland, which is right up the street, University Boulevard. Reached out to countywide groups such as the NAACP, another recent group, the Black Collaborative. So we're continuing to build up and reach out to folks as we move forward. We still need to get contacts regarding people with physical or in the disability community. If there's anybody on this call who's part of that community, please reach out to us and share that contact information so we could make that call or email to listen to what issues they may have.
Thanks, Nkosi. And I'd also add that, apart from reaching out to institutional forces, we are also trying to reach out to community leaders who may not have titles as community leaders, but they're leading their respective communities in some way. And a big part of this outreach has included outreach to multifamily households, because renters considered a big part of our county, and we are making sure that we can reach out to them in a meaningful way. But I'd also want to invite Jessica McQuarrie to add to this, because she has done some work on this area.
Thank you, Zubin. I also just wanted to add that we're fortunate to have some of our colleagues out in the community right now working on important planning efforts like the pedestrian master plan. And so we will be looking for opportunities to partner with our colleagues and learn from them and engage them in the planning process of folks that they have engaged through their work that would be interested and willing to also engage with us.
Great. Thank you so much, Jessica. So Nkosi, I think this next question I'll direct towards you, which is, does the plan include the options to expand the width of University Boulevard? And it's the question is assuming via liens on the property at its edges.
Yeah, we have not considered that yet. We're now trying to understand what are some of the things that people would like to see improved along University Boulevard. So we'll start with that and then figure out what the right-of-way can accommodate as a start. So I think in terms of impacts on properties, we'll be showing that based on the variety of alternatives or concepts that we will be preparing as we move forward.
Great. And I think the next question will go to our transportation planner, Alex. What are the results of the University Boulevard bicycle pilot and Flash BRT so far, and what conclusions would you draw from them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think some of the considerations in the pilot program were related to performance for vehicles, for the use of the corridor. I think the numbers I saw from the presentation were somewhere on average of about 150 new users a day. Multimodal users and cyclists were using that facility. But as I mentioned previously, there were also some concerns about traffic operations at some of the locations. So I think the pilot really reveals that there are strong feelings about how the space in the corridor is allocated, and that'll be a difficult decision-making process for us, and it'll be important to keep engaging the community throughout. I think to the Flash point, I think the latest numbers I saw on that were a little more than 500,000 riders on Flash in the first year of operation. So certainly seeing some heavy use.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to keep you here for a second and add Jessica McQuarrie to the conversation here, because I think both of you can contribute to this question, which is first is like, thanks NCOSI for the great presentation. I just wanted to ask when you all think the construction of dedicated dedicated paths for bikes and pedestrians on University will happen.
Well, thanks for that question. As NCOSI mentioned early in the presentation, we are a planning agency, and so through the planning process, we will work with all of you, your neighbors, and also with our implementing agencies, with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, with the Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration, and we'll really identify sort of the highest priorities for advancing implementation. So while we don't have a specific response to, when will these improvements, be put in on the ground, we're really just at the beginning of that process with you all tonight to identify what the priorities would be, and then we would work with our implementing agencies to advance those improvements. So for example, a few years ago, as NCOSI mentioned, we completed the Veers Mill Corridor Master Plan, and MCDOT is now working closely with MDOT-SHA to, start to really get into the design and engineering of what sidewalks and bikeways look like, and where protected crossings occur. And so hopefully we will have a similar trajectory for the University Boulevard Corridor Plan after, working with you all on the development of this plan and the recommendations.
Thanks, Jessica. Alex, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, I think that covers it really well. And I think Jessica's point that we're just at the early stages and considering a variety of options at this point.
Great. And Kosi, there are a few questions in line here for you, so stay with me. So the first question is, how will you do community engagement to decide / discuss which businesses open along University Boulevard?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. How will you do community engagement to decide / discuss which businesses open along University?
Well, we going to work in conjunction with Montgomery County agencies, especially their small business incubator group. We're going to go out. We have a meeting set up in January for the existing businesses, to be clear. And we'll focus on start with the Four Corners area, because that group with the county, they have already an established relationship. So we're going to go and meet the variety of business owners that are there today at Four Corners, and meet with them, hear their concerns, hear what issues they may have, and how we could address that in terms of our work within this plan. And then regarding the future, that's something we'll have to figure out regarding where we would recommend on the zoning side and in your commercial development. But that's something we still need to do a lot more homework on.
Great. So the next question is, how can you install bike lanes and BRT without infringing on residential properties? For example, where would the BRT station be at Arcola and University that is now occupied by a nursing home, townhouses, Northwood High School? The question also states that there is no room for a BRT station.
Yeah, I'll start and Alex could chime in. Yeah, we all the functional plan noted is this is a location, and as we look closer, we'll have to figure out what are the right-of-ways impacts today, and what are opportunities that we could leverage either from a redevelopment or without redevelopment, where to place a potential BRT. stop at the variety of stops that are recommended along this portion of University Boulevard. So yes, we haven't done the work yet to figure if it's limited or not, but we'll, as we roll out this project down the road, we'll figure out where the county could potentially place the BRT stop.
Alex or Carrie, do you want to add to this? I think this is a question that we get a lot.
Yes, thank you. Great question. And I really appreciate all the questions we're getting in the chat. I'm Carrie Sanders. I'm the Chief of Mid-County Planning. One thing I wanted to make sure we emphasize, and I think Nkosi did a great job of giving it in his overview, is we're really early in the process, and we're really interested in hearing your thoughts. We're not at the stage of making any recommendations. We're at the very beginning. But I will tell you that everything that we are going to be working on is going to be through the lens of Vision Zero, which is essentially improving safety for all roadway users, whether you're walking, you're crossing the street, you're driving, you're trying to take turns into your community, you're biking, or you're rolling. So when we do our plans, we're going to make sure that we're making it a safer roadway. And a lot of that means that, in some instances, we wouldn't want to negatively impact the community. We want to make sure that we're improving the conditions of the community and making it a safer place to be. So I just wanted to emphasize that as sort of a framework that we'll be looking at through the entire process as we do the plan.
Thanks, Carrie. And sort of a reminder that we are early in this process and that we want to hear from you. We'll plug our survey once again. So if you haven't responded to the survey, please take a look at it and please respond to the survey. So Nkosi, another question for you is, could some of the results of this work include zoning changes? The majority of the corridor is just single family R60 housing. It seems like a revitalization of this area could be to increase opportunities for retail or other stops. Otherwise, it reads just like a traffic corridor.
Yeah, I think we're going to explore where we could potentially have new infill recommendations along the corridor. I mean, we're going to be surgical, we're going to be strategic, and really make a reasonable case for some changes along the corridor. We don't know what that will entail right now, but we will explore a variety of things as we begin to do the work on the zoning side, the land use and zoning side. There will be some zoning changes because of the zoning ordinance rewrite that sort of, there's some zones that we cannot use again, such as the residential townhouse zones. Those properties will get rezoned. So if we don't do anything, those at a minimum would be the properties that would change.
Thanks, Nkosi. And I'm still going to continue keeping you here, which is, this is an interesting question. Person says, I own an office condo in Four Corners. This year, we have had an overwhelming problem with Blair students at all hours of the day hanging out by our property, vaping, etc. Does your plan address the problem that Blair has with its students out of the school property during the day?
We recently met with senior leadership at Blair High School, and they alerted us regarding the number of students that leave the campus, although they indicated it is a closed campus, but a lot of students do leave. So yes, it's something that we will, hopefully, we intend to establish a relationship with Blair staff as well as potentially students. And hopefully within this plan, we could have some recommendation regarding that particular issue.
Gary or Jessica, do you want to chime in on this question? I think this is a very interesting question.
That was a great summary. I think one thing that I would add is that we were really excited to see a couple of students at the in-person open house last Wednesday, and we're excited to have more opportunities to engage with the students and work with them through this process as well. So if any of you on the call have students that attend school in this area and want to connect them with us, we'd really welcome the opportunity to have a discussion with them and learn from their experiences as well.
Thank you. So Alex, I'm going to bring you back into the conversation, with the question of, will current bus stops be included in the planning process? I'm asking specifically about the stops near and in front of Northwood High School. Many students take public transportation to and from school, and the very narrow sidewalks are very unsafe. They can't safely handle the number of students waiting for the bus. I have seen students have to step into the roadway.
Thanks. Yeah, this is a great question. Definitely we'll be considering the current bus stops as part of this planning process. I think one of the concerns that we've heard and have seen in the field is that there are pretty long distances between protected crossings. And so particularly in places where folks are trying to ride the bus in both directions, not just one direction on University Boulevard, they'll need to cross University Boulevard at one end of their trip or the other. And so having safe options to do that is important. We've also heard concerns about the narrow sidewalks and about students waiting for buses and accessing schools. So I think that's definitely something we'll be thinking about.
Great. And there's a follow-up question, which Alex, you might be able to answer, and Nkosi, you can chime in on the same too, which is, what is the plan to improve lighting on University Boulevard?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's definitely a safety consideration and something that we'll need to coordinate with MCDOT and SHA on those recommendations.
And I'm going to keep you here, Alex, because I think the next question just came in for you too, which is, are there any interim plans to make this corridor safer for people who walk, roll, and for bus riders? And the examples a person offers are lowered speed limit, speed cameras, leading pedestrian intervals, fully marked crosswalks, reinstalled protected bike lanes, for example. 2 years is a long time to wait for this plan.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think as some folks have mentioned, we're sort of just at the beginning stages of thinking about planning for this corridor, and this is a longer term planning exercise. But Carrie, I saw you pop on screen, and if you have anything you want to add there.
Thank you, Alex. I would note that we do sort of the long range master planning for an area looking out many years. But our partner agency, the Montgomery County Department of Transportation, is looking at things in a more short term and is an implementing agency. So it could be that during this effort, the Montgomery County Transportation Department makes operational changes such as the timing of traffic lights or the installation of signs or the painting of pavement markings. They may do that during this process because that is part of their charge, is the more on the ground implementation. Same to be said for the Maryland State Highway Administration, who has jurisdiction over University Boulevard. They may also, this agency may also do some shorter term measures. And I do think that the feedback that you provide to us through this process will be very helpful for those implementing agencies. But yes, they could make changes, while we're doing this longer range effort. That does happen as part of the definition between the two different or three different agencies.
Thank you, Carrie. So I know we had a question about Northwood earlier. I'm wondering if Natasha, our urban designer, wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, thank you, Zubin. That was a great question that Alex has answered regarding the narrow sidewalk in front of Northwood. And we noticed that too, actually, Northwood came to us for the mandatory referral application.
Natasha, are we getting some echo from your end? I'm just wondering.
Sorry about that. Maybe I can just type my answer on the chat.
All right, I'm going to wait for Natasha's answer to me. Meanwhile, we can move on to the next question for NCOC. And this is an interesting question, which is, how does the planning activity influence the type of commercial retail along the corridor? It seems that fewer drive-throughs and strip malls would help this make this a more walkable and safer corridor.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm actually gonna, I'll turn to Bilal, who's one of our researchers who could chime in or give some more flavor comments.
Sure. Hey. So yeah, I think the opportunity for more retail is there. We're doing a market study right now to assess the potential for retail. In part, the sort of additional impact that BRT might have in terms of increasing demand. Given its proximity to Wheaton, to Silver Spring, to Kensington, and it currently being a predominantly residential area, and having seen the market conditions, it seems that there might be some potential for retail, particularly as it goes along with additional growth along the corridor, such as maybe perhaps multifamily housing along the corridor. If there's demand for that, those are the kinds of factors that influence increased retail. It would be interesting to see how much the current residential housing would generate in terms of retail demand, and that's something that the market study will help us answer, and so we're looking into that. There certainly will be some additional potential, maybe even from a placemaking perspective, for the retail to sort of spur that kind of community area, most likely again along University Boulevard. But it would be interesting to see what the sort of development potential that our consultants come up with, and then using that as a basis to make some more recommendations about commercial zoning.
Great. Thank you so much, Bilal. And Alex, I'm going to bring you back in with the question of, will slower speeds be implemented near Blair and Northwood? So a lot of questions about speed limits around our high schools.
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but that's definitely something we'll need to coordinate with our colleagues at MCDOT and SHA about. I will continue to emphasize that safety is very important to this plan. And you might be aware of some work that Countywide Planning has done on a predictive safety analysis for Montgomery County. So looked countywide at factors involved in crashes. And we know from research in other areas that speed is a significant factor in both the presence of crashes and in the severity of those crashes. And the work that was done in Montgomery County confirmed this specifically for roads in the county. So definitely something that's we'll be considering.
Great. And before you go, I'm going to pull you in for a few more questions, which is, will neighborhood streets very close to the main roads near Four Corners be considered? This person says they live in Northwood Park and often see cut-through traffic, especially during rush hour. These drivers who cut through don't always respect the stop signs in the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think Nkosi showed the boundaries for the study earlier, and I think anything that's within those boundaries, even if it's not on University Boulevard, is a place where we could potentially be making recommendations. I think we may be looking in our analysis even beyond those study boundaries as well, but we'll really be focused there. But yes, to the extent that that there are issues on neighborhood streets, it's important that we hear about those, and we have heard concerns about cut-through traffic on neighborhood streets. So certainly something we'll be considering.
Thanks, Alex. And I'll do the sort of question of boundaries. I would just add that we have the plan area and then we also have a study area. So just because we draw a line on a piece of paper, we don't say like we won't look anything beyond this. So we consider a much broader study area, while the process for planning for any particular boundary is ongoing. So Alex, I have a specific question for you. For an avenue, so if you know the answer, great, or you can pull in our colleagues. So will there be a safer crossing at Lorraine Avenue to encourage pedestrian walking to Safeway and the post office?
Yeah, that is a great question. And as folks have mentioned, we're not quite to the point of making recommendations yet. We're just getting started, but I am aware of that location. And we did some field work a couple of weeks ago at this point, and I'm very aware of the difficulty of crossing from that side of University where the Safeway is to the other side of University. There's a crossing that gets you part of the way across where the Papa John's is, where University splits, but then it's quite a distance to get to the next crossing to get all the way across University. So yeah, that's definitely an issue that we're aware of, and we'll be looking into crossings and the safety of crossings all up and down the University Boulevard corridor. But I'm particularly aware that there's a long distance between the crossing at US 29 and the next protected crossing up University.
And if I may add briefly to that, Alex, I think one thing that we're definitely going to be looking at, which we also looked at with the Veers Mill corridor plan that we have done with the community, not too far from here, is how far folks need to essentially walk to get to a safe crossing. For example, do you need to walk blocks to get to the nearest traffic light, or is it easily accessible? Another example may be when you cross the street, how many lanes of traffic are you having to cross? And when you're crossing those lanes of traffic, are the cars turning, which creates additional challenges for people that are trying to cross the street. So I just wanted to point that out. That's going to be one of the things that we're interested in looking at in a little bit more detail, because we understand that for folks to use transit, to walk, to bike, or to drive safely, that the crossing of the street and the width of the street can impact that.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks, Alex. I think there's somebody who's trying to ask a question. If you want to ask a question, unfortunately, at this point, you just have to type it into the Q&A. This is a very large meeting, so it's really difficult for us to unmute participants individually. So unfortunately, we have had to go the chat route. So please put all your questions into the Q&A. And again, we have a lot of questions. So if we don't get to answer your question today, then please know that we'll be working on it. And some questions are very detailed, so we'll have to study them, and we'll get most of these answers at some point on our website in the next few weeks. So I'm going to move to the next question. So I think this is a question for Nkosi, and Jessica and Carrie may be able to contribute to. And I think this is a question we have seen often, which is, will any residential homes be impacted?
Yeah, at this time, we're starting with the premise that we want to minimize any impacts on properties. However, we're also cognizant that given some of the desires of different things the community may want to have, we'll have to show you what could potentially happen if you put everything on the shopping list together. So we haven't done the work, but we're going to be thinking about minimizing those impacts that could occur based on the existing conditions today in terms of the proposed or the recommended right-of-way for the roadway. But until we start digging into seeing where the right-of-way is and things of that sort, we really can't give you a definitive answer right now. But you will see going forward what those potential impacts could be.
I think this kind of ties in nicely with the next question, which seems to come from the other end, which is, why is this process so long? Feels like this will take a decade with this timeline before any concrete poured. So I think we are balancing these two competing forces, which is, let's get it done fast and please hear our voices. So that's the beauty and challenge of planning. So I see Jessica there.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for this question. You know, I think that one thing that we're really striving to do with this plan, as we do with many of our initiatives, is build relationships with all of you and understand what your issues, challenges, and concerns are, as well as where you see strengths or opportunities. And frankly, that takes some time to make sure that we are hearing from all the variety of voices in the community, in the plan area, in the study area. And so that really does take some time. You know, to echo something that Carrie mentioned earlier, we will be working with our colleagues on the implementing side to think about if there are things that we can have as either short-term recommendations or that could be pursued more quickly than having something, you know, stretch into a decade. But you know, I do want to just emphasize that we're certainly trying our best to make sure that we connect with as many people in the plan area as possible, and that frankly takes a little bit of time. So we're looking forward to working with you all through this process.
And Kosi, why is this process so long?
Yeah, as Jessica noted, in terms of doing the public engagement, really thinking about where we should, because we're comprehensive thinkers, right? So we think about the roadway, the economy, sustainability, public facilities, et cetera. So it takes time to really understand the area, come up with clear recommendations, and then work through the Montgomery County Way, which is the planning board, well, the public, the planning board, and then the county council. So our timeline is traditional, is roughly between initiation and getting to the council is typically 18 months or sometimes less, sometimes more, but we're within the range of the time. But as Jessica noted, in terms of when we produce a product, really want that to be the best. And it does take time to really prepare these plans. I mean, I've worked on plans in the White Flint area, plans in Shady Grove, now University Boulevard, and all of them have taken a number of years. I mean, Shady Grove initially was between 2002 and 2006 from initiation, and that had a lot of public meetings, lots of review by the Fed committee. Likewise, White Flint was approved in 2010. The work started in 2006. This plan, our timeline is a little shorter, but still, in terms of producing a good product for the public, for the board, for the council, does take time.
Thanks. While I have like Nkosi and Jessica here, I'm going to pull in Alex on this panel too, because I think all of you can contribute to this next question, which is, are you considering widening the area of University Boulevard just north of Four Corners, specifically where Brunnett Avenue meets University Boulevard? Our temple is concerned about losing part of our property. Although I understand that you have not submitted any particular plans yet, is it possible or even likely that our temple might lose property?
Yeah, we haven't gotten there. So we'll try to be as nimble and flexible regarding the property impacts, regarding the property impacts on University Boulevard. So we are aware of property owners being affected. But as we begin this work, we'll have that in our minds to say the recommended right of way is this amount, and then we'll work to figure out what really would land within that. So until we do that work, which hasn't been done yet, we'll have more as we go into next year on what are some of the things that are the community is desiring, and then what are the potential sort of trade-offs or impacts that could come from some of those things.
Alex or Jessica, do you want to add to that?
No, just to reiterate that, you know, we are truly at the beginning of the process. And so there is a lot of work to be done to get to that point of understanding what the right-of-way looks like and what potential, if any, impacts there would be. So as Nkosi said, that's something that will be at the front of our mind as we're working through this process with you all.
Thank you. So, Alex, I'm going to come to you. Planning staff have recommended dedicated median bus lanes on 29 and the possibility of moving the flash stop. Will this be part of the UBC analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think kind of coming back to the time frame of things, the 29 Flash BRT project is moving ahead. MCDOT is leading that effort, and I think that's something that we'll consider as we make our recommendations for the University Boulevard Corridor as well. But because the 29 corridor extends far beyond our study area, we'll be focused just on that area there in Four Corners.
Thank you. And I think I'll stay with you, Alex, for a second, which is there room for a dedicated BRT lane, bicycle side lanes, wide sidewalk with space? Or does something have to give?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think realistically, yes, something probably does have to give, at least if you're thinking about the Complete Streets design guidelines for the county, and those were developed with planning and consultation with MCDOT, and so there are sort of dimensions that would be ideal for all of these facilities. Then I think there are dimensions that realistically we can achieve, and so that's where we are at the start of this process, is getting input from everyone here tonight, and thank you for coming and providing that input to think about what the priorities are for that space and how we design the best corridor that we can.
Thanks. And staying with you, the jug handle loops add to the traffic complexity and confusion in Four Corners. This leads to a lot of neighborhood cut through traffic. Will a better solution be considered?
That's also a really good question. And if anybody has the solution, I am all ears. But I think yes, we will be exploring a variety of solutions. But I think some of the challenges are a lot of the existing land uses in the area, and those are institutions and land uses that have been present for quite a while, and so folks familiar with the area know that there are some pretty substantial buildings where University Boulevard divides, and so we're just at the early stages of thinking about that.
Great. And this is a question, I believe, in some ways for all of us, which is why should we trust the process? When the county experimented with the bike lane between Arcola and Amherst, you received input from the Kempill community, and most residents complained that they never saw a cyclist in the bike lane. Yet the barrier stayed up for weeks after you received citizen input. So, Gary, I'm glad to see you join the conversation.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. I completely understand the concern, and our job is to serve the community. We are public servants. That's part of the reason we're here tonight, to listen to your feedback and to respond to that. In terms of the specific pilot project that was conducted on University Boulevard with the bike lanes, it's really important sometimes with projects to test the project and to see what the pros and cons were of the project and to learn from it. In that case, it wasn't a specific master plan project that the planning department was testing. I believe it was partnership with SHA and perhaps some other agencies testing it. But we definitely learned from that. And I think there's some really good lessons from that process that we can use in combination with the feedback that we're getting from you tonight and the data analysis that we're going to do with this plan that can hopefully help us structure something moving forward that's it's certainly not going to be a perfect solution, but we hope that it will reflect what the community is looking for, as well as making the roadway safer. We do know for the data that we've looked at thus far that there's a real safety issue on this stretch of roadway. And we want to make that safer for all people that are using the roadway and visiting the area. So we're hopeful that through this process, we can come up with a solution it is going to involve a balance of competing interests. I think Alex mentioned earlier that something will have to give. And you know, we will understand that we need to respect that balance and factor in all the community input that we get from you. So just at the start of the process, but I think this is a very good question. And we look forward to learning from the pilot project and hopefully coming up with something that's better in the long term.
Thank you, Gary. And I think the next question, I'll probably take it myself, which is how will future public meeting notifications be shared? So our goal is to share it at as many venues as possible. For this meeting or these meetings, these open houses, we did mailers. We knocked on doors. Some of you might have seen us in front of their houses or on your Ring cameras, because we definitely saw a few of those. And also through all kinds of social media. So we have a robust communications team and a communications plan. So, and I think we have some evidence for that now that our outreach was relatively successful, because we have had unprecedented participation in the last 2 meetings. So I think, and that's one of the reasons why this is a webinar instead of a meeting at this point, because at a certain level, Zoom tells you to make it a webinar and not a meeting. But yeah, we'll do our best to reach as many people possible through as many channels to get there, to get people involved in our meetings. And then we'll also do a few events, and we'll be happy to come to your neighborhood events if you invite us. And you'll see us a lot more in your communities over the next few months. And Kosi, Jessica, do you want to add to that?
No, I would just say our doors are open. So, so if you're a member of an association, civic group, nonprofit group, advocacy group, whoever's out there, we want to, have some time with you. If you're a property owner that we have not yet, you've not yet responded to our variety of things we've sent to you, we definitely want to have the opportunity to chat with you for at least half an hour, just to talk about a project and to hear any things that you may have.
Thank you. I'd also add that we're open to sort of whatever venue might work for you all as well. If you feel like it might be helpful to meet along the corridor at some point and walk and talk, or connect at a park, or we're really interested in meeting you all and your community members where you are. And so we're open to the feedback that you provide to tell us where those places are as well. We'll try a few different locations and a few different times and locations, and see what seems to resonate. But if you know of a place where the community regularly gathers that you feel like it'd be good for us to engage with you all in that location, please do let us know. Don't be shy. We're here, and we're ready to hear from you and to connect with you.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, Nkosi. So for the next question, I'm going to pull Bilal in again. And this is an interesting question, which is recently a new Dunkin' has opened, and it's very clear that they are there for the through traffic. What kind of checkpoint will you be implementing to make sure that any businesses are oriented to those who live in the community? And I think this is a question that maybe Natasha or Nkosi you can add to also, because I think it's not just a market question, it's also a planning question in many ways.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you, Zubin. I mean, I think part of this process, and certainly something that Nkosi and Natasha and others can speak to, is just that, seeking community input, trying to get an understanding of what the kinds of places and mix of uses that people want. To some extent, the retail that is there along the corridor does reflect the demand of people that drive up and down University Boulevard, as well as the neighborhoods. Truthfully, the neighborhoods, to the extent that there hasn't been a ton of growth, are more or less well served by retail in the retail sort of centers that we know of, such as Wheaton, Silver Spring, Kensington. So it's unlikely that there's a lot of sort of unmet demand or for additional spending. There might be. That's something that I think our market study is sort of looking into. But in terms of, retail doesn't only respond just to the neighborhoods. And I think assessing the kinds of, or taking into consideration the kinds of things that you want, the places that you would want to put them strategically, is the way to make sure that the retail mixes meet the neighbors, sort of the neighborhood's demand. But fundamentally, there is larger trade areas, and the businesses are unlikely to sort of sprout up to serve only the existing residents today. So there's got to be a little bit of growth, but yeah, I think that part of this is sort of figuring out what that growth should look like. Yeah.
Thanks, Bilal. Nkosi, do you want to add to that?
No, I think Bilal covered the sort of market dynamics aspect to the issue regarding, in terms of what he said.
Great. Bilal, I'm going to sort of ask a question which relates to your earlier answer, which is what goes into a market study? The current economy is somewhat anomalous compared to the trajectory of the last 20 years. So how do you study an area like this?
Sure. So what a consultant will do and is currently doing, is that they'll take an existing conditions of the market, sort of look at rents and sale prices and other factors, and put them in the context of the region. So other places in Montgomery County as benchmarks, the county overall, comparable places that we might aspire to be like or are similar to, and try to understand what's unique about this place, where the potential and is, what the opportunities are. It's true that it's difficult to make projections and forecasts, and I think the consultant recognized that. We recognize that as staff that will evaluate this study, and it's likely that we'll take, conservative sort of approaches to evaluating what the potential is. But there will always, to the extent that there's going to be growth, or if there is growth, that always does tend to generate, demand for more retail, and that's really what the market study is looking at. What's the potential for new housing, new commercial areas. They look at other conditions like the household spending, sale prices, and sort of think about what developers look to as well, and make conclusions from the data about what other people in the business community are also seeing, what potential they see, and provide us strategic recommendations about how our land use recommendations can meet those opportunities that the market presents. You're right, it's going to be tough to look 20 years out and make an accurate prediction, but studying these factors, accounting for COVID, accounting for the sort of tailing off of specific kind of bricks and mortar retail, will still give us some numbers, some understanding to sort of plan around. I don't know.
Thanks, yeah, and Nkosi, if you want to add to that, but yeah, that's a very good point. We can only study what we see and have data for. Yeah, I think, and planning for the future is difficult because of the old adage, like those who live by the crystal ball end up eating ground glass. So yeah, we don't get into the prediction business that much, but we can just plan for possibilities. So Alex, I'm going to bring you back into this conversation. And my question to you is there a way we can create temporary buffer to add safety for pedestrians? I think the pedestrian safety concern kind of keeps rising to the top. And I'm going to add to that question, which is, can we get speed cameras implemented now while you're designing the corridor for the future? Lots of speeders and many pedestrians around the school. So if you can kind of combine those two questions.
Yeah, those are great questions. And I think I'll kind of hark back to the earlier statements about the time horizon for this plan, in that this is a longer looking plan, but I do very much appreciate the urgency of the safety challenges on University Boulevard. I do understand that for speed cameras, that's something that the Montgomery County Police Department has or could implement, and I think there's a process for doing that. So they would probably be the right people to approach about that, and we'll be continuing to coordinate with all of our partners as we develop this plan. I think the question about some sort of buffer for pedestrian safety along the corridor is also an interesting one. I think that's probably nearer term than the kind of things that we'll be able to address immediately, but there could potentially be, nearer term recommendations as part of the plan. So thank you for that question. That's something we'll definitely consider.
Thank you. I think we are approaching the end of our meeting. We still have a few questions, but a lot of questions are very detailed in some cases that we'll have to do a little bit of work on to get the answers to you. So I think this is probably a good time for us to wind down here, but I would want to pull in some of our staff again. So Nkosi, who's going to be leading the project, Jessica McVery, and Gary Sanders, if you can offer some sort of final words for this. I think this has been a very successful meeting. We are very glad for everyone who has showed up. And yeah, this is, as we have kind of said, first of many. So we'll have many more meetings, events, and conversations. So please stay engaged, and we look forward to hearing from you more.
Yeah, I would say thanks for everyone who took some time out of the evening. We know you could be doing other things with your time, so we appreciate you participating. Things that require a more in-depth answer, we will post those on the web coming up soon. And obviously this will be recorded, the presentation will be posted as well. And again, if you have any other questions, please reach out to us. So I'll turn it over to Jessica and Sanders.
I'll just echo the thanks for being here with us this evening. All of your questions were incredibly helpful. We do wish that we could have been able to do this, allowing you to unmute yourself and ask the questions. But I guess one of the challenges with the meeting of this size is that we weren't able to accommodate that. And so thanks for bearing with us tonight and using the Q&A function. We do look forward to meeting you, in person or virtually again in the future, and working through this process with all of you. We're excited as a team to be starting this effort, and really look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
I'll close out by just thanking everybody this evening for participating. This has been a great start to this effort, to hear from you. And like I said, we're at the beginning, and framing this entire process through the lens of Vision Zero, which is improving safety for all users of the roadway on University, and also working with the community to come up with a collective vision for the area. I'm optimistic that I think we can really improve the safety, and I think through this plan effort we can make this a really desirable place for people to walk, to bike, to roll, and to drive, and to use transit. So thank you for your participation tonight, and we look forward to working with you on this plan.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks again for giving us your time. I don't want to keep anyone longer than I need to, but stay safe, and we'll see you at the next one.